Hey there, Twisters. Today I wanted to talk to you about some potential Conn Smythe Trophy winners, which is awarded to the most valuable player here during the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I'm going to go inside the numbers with some of these standout performers from the postseason so far. And of course, I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Who do you think ends up winning the Conn Smythe Trophy? Maybe give me somebody from the Avalanche and somebody from the Lightning, and we'll see if you are correct. And of course, we're going to be doing play-by-play and hanging out with you Twisters throughout the Stanley Cup final, through the offseason, and beyond. So if you're new to the channel, well, I think you know what to do. So before we even get into any players here, what do I think it actually takes to win the Conn Smythe Trophy? Well, first of all, I do think that you have to be on the winning team. There is a very, very rare exception where somebody from the losing side could win it, and I'll talk about that later on. But as things trend over the last 2 decades, yeah, you have to be on the winning team. Second of all, you do have to produce quite a bit offensively, or at least you have to be very, very, very clutch, like Justin Williams back in 2014 for the LA Kings. Or if you're a goaltender, yes, you have a pretty good shot at winning, but you do have to stand on your head at least at points during the Stanley Cup playoffs. And lastly, I think that the overall performance of a player during the Stanley Cup final does take some precedent over the overall body of work, but still, I think you have to be at least solid in each of the first 3 series before you even get to the Stanley Cup final. All right, now let's get into our players, and we'll start with the 2 guys who've won the Conn Smythe Trophy most recently because they're both on Tampa Bay. So the first guy is Andrei Vasilevsky. He won the Conn Smythe last year, and this is how he's doing so far in the postseason. Do note that I am making this after Game 1, but not Game 2 or later on in the Stanley Cup final. So far in 18 games, he has a .926 save percentage, a 2.36 goals against average, and a shutout. Now, his overall performance has been pretty good, but it's even been better since the first 5 or 6 games since that first round series against Toronto. So after that, in 12 games, he's only allowed 22 goals, so that's less than 2 per game, and he has a .944 save percentage. But I think that one thing that works against Vasi is that his numbers are not actually as good as they were last year, and I think that he stood on his head more last year for Tampa. So he had a 1.90 goals against average, a .937 save percentage, and he also had 5 shutouts compared to the 1 that he has so far, and it's not easy going up against the Colorado Avalanche, let's just say that. But I think that one thing that could be a lenient factor for him is that this season he's been challenged a whole lot more because he's had to face the 2 top offenses in the regular season in Florida and also Toronto, and the Avalanche I think were 4th in the regular season. But this year I would argue that it hasn't been Vasilevsky being so great in every single one of these games. It's really been the defense in front of him that has particularly been marveling, with the likes of Victor Hedman, Eric Chernak, Zach Bogosian, Ryan McDonough, of course. So I don't really think that it's something that you can attribute to just one player for the Tampa Bay Lightning in these playoffs. Now on that subject, let's transition to Victor Hedman, the star defenseman for the Tampa Bay Lightning, because he won the Conn Smythe back in 2020. Now he's 3rd behind Makar and Adam Fox in scoring among defensemen in the playoffs. He has 2 goals and 13 assists for 15 points in 18 games. Now, let's look at 2020, okay? Because he scored 22 points in those 25 games, so that's a pretty similar clip, except Hedman supplied 10 goals in the postseason for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I just really haven't seen him take over in that end of the rink throughout the later part of these playoffs. I think that he's been good, sure, but he's looked kind of pedestrian for Victor Hedman. Not to say that he hasn't been good in his own end. It's just that, again, as I was mentioning earlier, can you really drill down to one player in the Tampa Bay home end in terms of who's really carrying the way? I don't think so, and I argue that maybe even it's Ryan McDonough who's had the best defensive performance in his own end so far, even if you compare Vasilevsky or put him in that category as well. So Victor Hedman's been really good, but I mean, he has 8 assists in his last, he has 5 assists in his last 8 games. He's not just dazzling all that much compared to what he did 2 years ago. We'll go back to Tampa later, but of course, if we're comparing defensemen here, we have to talk about Cale Makar, because this guy has been on a tear in these playoffs. In 15 games, so 3 fewer than Tampa, he has 5 goals and 17 assists for 22 points. He has a +12 rating. 27 minutes and 12 seconds of time on ice. He's blocked 35 shots. He's had 16 takeaways to just 9 giveaways. So statistically, everything really does point to him. You look at what he did in that Nashville series. He was incredibly dominant there. He still leads his team in scoring by a few points. And Cale Makar, even though after that Predator series, he hasn't been necessarily dominant in every game, he's generating plenty of chances out there. So I think that if he's able to kind of stay at this pace, I couldn't exactly see anybody else on the Avalanche being chosen over him. He really did, strengthen his candidacy here with how he played in the first round. But even as things have gone on, he's still been a very valuable contributor for the Avalanche. Now let's touch on 3 other Avalanche who I think could be considered for this award. They all have the same amount of points through 15 games here, and that's, of course, Nathan MacKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, and Mikko Rantanen. So let's start with Nathan MacKinnon. On the surface, you might think that he would be the favorite among the forwards for the Avalanche because, yeah, he leads them in goals. He leads them in shot attempts or shots. He has 87 through the playoffs so far. That is by far the most among anybody in the postseason. He's got a plus 11 rating. He's registered a point in 13 of 15 games. And really, we have seen Nathan MacKinnon, even when he doesn't get on the board, just the chances that he gets and generates, how he plays on the power play, what he does in transition. He is a spectacle out there, kind of like Makar at the forward position. So I would think that just because of what kind of pressure he's able to put on opposing defenses, he would be that guy. But I think you can make arguments for the other 2 forwards as well. Mikko Rantanen, I think that his stock kind of keeps rising, especially if Nazem Kadri is going to be out, because Rantanen's been playing more in a second-line role in the playoffs, but he has been able to contribute in that role, and especially on the power play as well. So he has 5 goals and 14 assists, with 7 of those coming on that lethal Avalanche power play. I just think that he's coming on pretty strongly at the end of things. I expect him, I mentioned in my series preview that he would be an X factor in getting the Avs over the hump and winning the Stanley Cup here. So I could really see him flourishing, going out with a flourish, and certainly, be deserving of that award, or at least some strong consideration there. So don't leave Rantanen out, and don't leave Landeskog out as well. As I was mentioning earlier, if all your horses up there at the top of the scoring charts are, pretty neck and neck, then it could end up being awarded to a captain of the team. And Landeskog is a longtime captain. And think about, the fact that they had come up short for the past couple of seasons, and finally they're able to strike through and be very dominant in this postseason. Yeah, sure, leadership is certainly a contributor there. Landy, in 15 games, he has 9 goals and 10 assists for 19 points. He's tied with Connor McDavid for the plus-minus leader in the postseason. So I think Landeskog, if he's able to kind of, like I said about Rantanen, finish really strongly here, and if he's, up there with Makar for scoring more or less, yeah, maybe it could get awarded to him as well. But I still think that MacKinnon's the first guy that we think of right now, at least among the forwards. But let's get back to the Lightning here, because we do have a few forwards to talk about. The first of whom has to be Nikita Kucherov. He is by far their leading scorer in the playoffs. In 18 games, he has 7 goals and 17 assists for 24 points, getting things done. Even strength in transition especially, and also on the power play. 5 goals and 5 assists so far on the man advantage. And yeah, if he continues to produce at this clip and the Lightning win the Stanley Cup, it's his. It's his to lose, honestly. I don't think that Hedman or Vasilevsky have done just enough to win the award again. I could see it going to Nikita Kucherov. But of course, there are certainly 2 other players who could stand out among the voters out there and be chosen for this award. The first of whom is Andrei Palat, because, man, ever since the second round started, he has been on an absolute tear. He has 12 points in those 10 games, and overall in 18 games, he has 9 goals and 8 assists for 17 points. I didn't know that he could play this physically, but he's got 51 hits as well. That's very physical for a forward, and he's been vital at even strength. All of his goals have come at even strength, and that certainly helps for a team that doesn't really generate a whole lot of set 5-on-5 offense, at least not so much in this postseason. They're certainly an opportunistic team, but really it's been Palat carrying them for a lot offensively in the postseason as things have gone along. And it's also been Steven Stamkos, the captain. So he has 9 goals and 6 assists for 15 points, so a little bit less than Palat there. And I think that he would need to offensively come alive to get really into strong consideration, considering he's 9 points back in Nikita Kucherov. But even so, Stamkos is a clutch scorer out there, so he certainly has some opportunity to do that. And I don't think that the voters would discredit him for how he's played in his own end. I mean, he has 47 hits. You've really noticed Steven Stamkos playing a physical, heavy brand of hockey for much of the playoffs. He also has 13 blocked shots. That's really good for somebody in that role for a forward. And so I think that Stammer, sure, if he kind of gets closer to Kucherov and Palat in the scoring charts, then yeah, he as the captain. Imagine that. Can you see the voters leaving Stamkos out if the Lightning three-peat and Stammer wasn't even able to compete for one of those cups? one of them went to Hedman, one of them Vasilevsky. It's like, how could they not give the other one to Stammer? It's got to really be Kucherov widening the gap in the scoring charts there. Now, I'll weigh in with some final thoughts, but before I do, I really want to say that, yeah, I do think that a player from the losing side should be considered almost equally as somebody from the winning side to win the Conn Smythe Trophy. This has only happened 5 times in the 66 times that the Conn Smythe Trophy was awarded. So Jean-Sébastien Giguère, of course, was the last player to do that with the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim back in 2003. So they went to a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final against the Devils, and Giguère had a .945 save percentage, a 1.62 goals against average, and 5 shutouts. Yeah, that was during the dead puck era, so scoring was a lot lower, but those numbers are still absurd no matter what era we're talking about here. So I think that somebody like that should be considered more often. Ron Hextall was the last player who won the award on the losing side. So, hey, goaltenders, they always have at least an outside shot, I would say. One of our subscribers actually asked me, do I think that somebody could be considered if they don't go to the Stanley Cup Final? I think it's incredibly rare, but I would say yes. I think so. If, for example, Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl was able to drag their team to a Game 7 in the Western Conference Final and lose, and let's say there wasn't a particularly outstanding performance by a cup-winning player necessarily, then yeah, maybe you should consider that because, you know, I look at it this way. The Avalanche, they might come out playing under 20 games and winning a Stanley Cup, whereas the Oilers, they could have theoretically played 20 or 21 games, the same number, right? And been dragged by one player. This is all completely hypothetical, but I wouldn't rule it out entirely. But I do think that that is wicked, wicked rare and something we probably will never see. So just some overall thoughts here. If the Avalanche win, I think Makar probably wins the award because, god darn it, he's been amazing for the most part, at least offensively. And, you know, the voters, they care more about offense than defense. I'll be honest about that in most cases. And so Makar is kind of on pace to get that award. But if MacKinnon could, for example, have like 2 game-winning goals in the Stanley Cup Final, there's plenty of hockey to play, then yeah, maybe he gets considered, or Rantanen goes off like I kind of have been anticipating that he will. I still think it's Makar's award to lose there, but if the Lightning win, Kucherov's got to win it. Between all those forwards that I talked about, I think Kucherov would be the guy just because he's so far out in front there. Stamkos will get considered, but kind of like MacKinnon, he needs to show up big, get a little clutch in the Stanley Cup Final if he wants to upend what I think is Nikita Kucherov's award to lose. Vasilevsky would really need to stand on his head, but again, I think it's been the defense in front of him that's been even better in the postseason, and I wouldn't even rule out Makar from winning the award even if the Lightning end up coming out on top. If we have really, really low scoring games going forward, then yeah, Cale Makar with 24 points in 15 games. At that trajectory, yeah, maybe give the award to him. Anyway, folks, let me know your thoughts down in the comments down below. Maybe give me a player from each team or maybe a dark horse from each team. I always enjoy looking at cases like that. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. That helps others like you discover the channel. New folks, subscribe. Join the Twist Brigade here as we get to 4,500 and hopefully 5,000 subscribers very, very soon. And see the video description where you can find information on how to follow me on social media and pick up some Twisted Wrister hockey merch. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Nick. I'll catch you Twisters later. Ciao.